Good day and welcome to the CINCY Slangin' Bearcat Podcast. I'm Coomer, joined as always by Hummer. Hummer, what's up, buddy?
We got NBA draft entrance. We got transfer portal news. What can I say? It's a great day to be a Cincinnati Bearcat basketball fan.
Indeed it is, good sir. Indeed it is. And we are joined with an old friend of the podcast, someone we haven't talked to in far too long, a fan favorite, a true professional, and one of the most handsome, if not the most handsome man on the Cincinnati Bearcats beat. Justin Williams of The Athletic is back on the Cincy Slangin' Bearcat podcast. Justin, welcome.
Thanks, guys. I will. I'll take the compliment. We don't need to dive into the facts of it or whether it's true or not, but I appreciate it, and I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Indeed, sir. Indeed. And I definitely want, before we got into the nuts and bolts of Bearcat sports and any other silliness that I promise you is coming from our Discord channel, because we did prepare people for the fact that you were going to be coming on this podcast. I just did want to cede the floor to you for an opportunity to speak on, frankly, a huge loss in the Bearcat community, which is Chad Brendel's wife, Kelly, who passed away a few short days ago. So Justin, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to lift up Chad and his family real quick. Obviously, a really tough time, and I think everyone that follows the Bearcats knows Chad and knows the work he's done on the beat. He's been a great friend and colleague to me during my time on the beat. So just want to let him know it's obviously a really difficult time. I think a lot of people have followed just kind of all the struggles that Kelly's been with through her health, and so we're thinking about Chad and thinking about his family, and just want to keep him close to heart.
Absolutely. Heartbreaking to follow along, heartbreaking to see, and appreciate you mentioning it here at the beginning of the podcast. So as we awkwardly transition into something much less significant and important, it is like Hummer said at the top, there has been some news in Bearcat land, and that is the fact that we do have two members of the Cincinnati Bearcats basketball team who have decided to take their talents elsewhere. In one case, Landers Nolley has decided to enter his name into the NBA draft. He still does have the option, I think, of coming back to college. He is maintaining his eligibility, though I think there's a lot of people that assume this is heading in one direction. And then Jeremiah Davenport, a 4-year big-time player at the Cincinnati Bearcats basketball program, hometown kid, has officially put his name into the transfer portal and made the announcement that he will not be returning as well. So, Justin, I ask of you, is this where it stops, or is this just the beginning in terms of what we're seeing with the Bearcats' involvement or Bearcats' exodus in the transfer portal?
I'd say middle, maybe. First, I would say I wouldn't say that it's leaning one way on Landers. You referencing the NBA. I wouldn't necessarily say that means it's leaning the other way either. I do think there's, I think he maintained his eligibility for a reason. I do think there's a chance that at the end of this, he decides to come back. He's a smart guy. He has, I think, good people in his ear directing him. He knows there's some NIL opportunities for him at the college level. He knows that Cincinnati's playing in the Big 12. He knows he would be kind of the top featured player. So certainly if he feels like he has good opportunities to play professionally, or if, the feedback he gets from the NBA is good, or he looks good in some workouts, I'm not going to be blown away if he ends up going that route. I also won't be blown away if he's wearing a Cincinnati Bearcats uniform next season. The thing that'll be interesting there is I believe the NCAA withdrawal date is May 31st for the NBA draft. I do think no matter what he decides, it'll be pretty close to that deadline that we have a decision. And so that'll be interesting just from kind of a roster management level for Wes Miller and the entire Bearcat staff, because if you're not sure that you have him, that's a big piece you would have to replace if you lose him. So how do you kind of juggle what you're doing in the transfer portal that way? So certainly going to be some intrigue on that front, and probably for a while. But yeah, Jeremiah Davenport went in the transfer portal. I don't think that was totally unexpected. I think when I wrote my end of the season kind of wrap up piece, that was a name that was a possibility. And I don't think that'll be the last Bearcat player that goes in the transfer portal. But I also don't think we're going to see like a huge wave, massive numbers changing over moving forward either.
On the Landers Nolley front, I just want to interject quickly, Hummer, is there any element of this where Wes Miller and his staff, and let's say CINCY Reigns collective, would be making a case for him to return, like actively recruiting him to not stay in the NBA draft?
I mean, they want him back, and I'm sure Wes Miller has told him that. He's said it publicly that he wants all the guys back. I think he genuinely wants Landers back. They know how good of a player he is. There's also that thing when you're a coach, like if the feedback your player gets is good and going to the NBA or playing professionally is like the right thing personally for that player and his family and his life and things like that. It's hard as a coach, as good as that player might be, to kind of say like, oh no, come on, come back to college for another year. So if it's a situation where Wes genuinely felt like, no, the right thing for you to do, Landers, is to go pursue a professional career, I think he would tell him that. I think he would give him, the advice that is best for him. But yeah, I mean, I certainly don't think this is a situation where Landers said, I'm declaring, and Wes said, all right, go with God. It was great knowing you. Like they're definitely in contact. Landers is close with Wes. He's close with Chad Dollar. He's close with a lot of people in the program. So it's just going to be one of those things where I think it's going to be this ongoing process. And because of how late that deadline is, even if Landers goes up till mid to late May, that's just going to, take some juggling and probably some trust on the part of the staff of like, all right, do we feel like we are getting him back? If we are, let's try and plan to build the roster that way. If we're starting to feel like maybe he's getting really good feedback and that might be the best thing for him, then we have to kind of switch up how we're recruiting. So it will be interesting, but I definitely think this isn't a case where like Wes is going to be sitting around waiting for Landers to make his decision in a couple of months and then be caught off guard by it.
You're muted.
Oh, you're muted, Hummer.
Jesus.
It was my squeaky chair. I had to mute myself in my squeaky chair. No, I wanted to ask that question about, what is the staff doing? How do you prepare, for that awkward transition right now? Is Landers here? Is he not coming back? Are they actively recruiting to that spot now in that for that potential outcome, or are they, is there kind of like a sit and wait period before they start really trying to identify talent to replace someone like Landers Nolley?
Yeah, I think if it's Landers or just in general, I think you have different scenarios. Because the other trouble that I think a lot of coaches are finding in the transfer portal is like, oh, I really like this player who's out there, and maybe we have a chance at him, maybe we could go get him. But, we're hearing this guy might jump in the portal. Or remember last week when we really liked this guy and then, 100 more guys jumped in the portal and it turns out we like some of them. So I do really think it's tough because with the way this window is set up, what is it, May 11th, I think is when the first window closes. Like there's still going to be a few more weeks, I think, of players, legitimate players, big time players going into the transfer portal. And so you run this risk of, if you jump on somebody early because you like them and you can get them, maybe you pass up on the chance of getting somebody else in a couple weeks, who hasn't gotten the portal yet, or maybe is still kind of feeling out their options. And I think it's the same way with something like this. Like, okay, you have a scenario A where we have one spot and we need a big, and so this is what we're going to do in that spot. Or we have two spots and we need a perimeter guy. Or, one of the second spot is Landers and we need to go get a scorer on the wing or something like that. So it's certainly not easy. I mean, this is, part of the job. This is what they're paid to do. But I definitely think it's like multiple scenarios are kind of up on the whiteboard and you're having to kind of hold them all in balance and see what makes sense. And probably within that, you have like a top list, right? Of like, here's the guys who, if they say yes, we're taking them, no matter what. Even if we don't have a spot, we'll take them and we'll figure it out later. But if they're not part of that, kind of like wish list, cream of the crop, then you're kind of going back to that whiteboard and saying like, all right, how does this make us better next year? How much better does this make us next year? Does this make sense to do this now? And I think kind of Landers and whether he comes back or whether he doesn't is all part of that.
I definitely don't want to get caught up on Landers too long. I think it's an interesting conversation, and the point you made about coaches not wanting to discourage players with solid or good feedback at the professional ranks, they don't want to discourage them from staying there when you have those types of opportunities. I do think the new element is being able to say, I don't want to discourage you from staying from pursuing your dreams in the NBA. However, were you to stay, our boy B Fox over here has got a $500,000 check with your name on it. So it's a little different. It's just a little different than it might have been in the past.
I'm not sure on the compliance phrasing of that sentence, but I will say if Landers does not come back to Cincinnati, it will not be for a lack of NIL opportunities.
Can we just be clear? Isn't Ohio going to be passing some sort of bill like Oklahoma that's just going to shield mostly Ohio State, maybe a little bit of Cincinnati from the ramifications of any kind of NCAA violations from NIL?
That sounds like a question for the previously mentioned B Fox. That's we're way out of my element now.
Before you were coming on, I mentioned the fact that I did pose a thread in the Catskeller Social Club Discord channel, which we both think you're in currently, and we have ideas of burner accounts that may or may not be you in the Catskeller Social Club. We might throw out some names, and you can confirm or deny whether these are actually you in the Discord. But I want to make sure we get some of these questions asked. They're hard-hitting questions, tough questions I wouldn't have thought of had I not posed them to the group. And my first one to you is from the councilman, Joe Barnett, a friend of the podcast, someone who is well regarded in the administration. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck?
100 horse-sized ducks, or 100 duck-sized horses. 100 duck-sized horses. Yes, without question.
Give me your thought process. Why?
I can drop kick a duck-sized horse. I cannot drop kick a horse-sized duck. Horses are huge. I will take my chances. Like 100's a lot, but I'm not going to be able to outrun a horse-sized duck. I'm guessing it might still also be able to fly, and
a
duck-sized horse will at least stay grounded and will be at prime kicking angle. So.
And ducks are nasty.
Rolling boulders or swinging a big branch around, that's going to help me a lot more with the duck-sized horses.
So it excites you to kick the shit out of 100 baby horses.
Only for survival purposes, not as like a leisure activity.
Thank you, Councilman, for that wonderful question.
So you mentioned the compliance, not necessarily being in compliance language favor there. Another question we actually have from this channel is in reference to the NIL collectives. So I guess maybe more from that compliance standard, how do these NIL collectives work? Do you have any insight on the behind the scenes working of what's involved there?
Well, they're all different. There are some that are probably a lot more involved or have a lot more power and hands-on power than others.
Maybe less care for rules too.
Yes, definitely. Maybe they don't have lawyers who have passed the bar who are running things. I think it's pretty clear of the fact that John Cunningham has literally sat on a dais with Brian Fox with the CINCY Reigns logo behind him, that he feels pretty confident in the compliance and the way
our shit is buttoned up.
Yeah,
very buttoned up.
It certainly seems that way.
Is this a good time to announce the Catskeller Social Club NIL collective that has no rules and no regards for compliance whatsoever?
It's all crypto.
Yeah. to the moon. So I guess that's a broad question. I guess I might be able to speak to how CINCY Reigns more specifically works. But yeah, I would say that there are some collectives that have no support or acknowledgement or backing from the university or athletic department or things like that. And then there are some that have clear alignment like CINCY Reigns. And I think those are certainly set up better for success than maybe some of the others.
One thing about CINCY Reigns being so tightly connected and in line with the administration is that if that day and time comes where there are rules put in place, or let's say schools or programs themselves start paying players or are forced to pay players, I do think there is the possibility of Reigns essentially transferring their funds and everything that's been acquired directly to the university, as opposed to a collective that's completely separate, truly wild, wild west, just rich guys throwing around bags, whereas that money's not going to necessarily pass its way down to an administration. Is there some thought process in that piece of it, do you think?
Yeah, and I mean, with the way the collectives and the NIL is set up, like no one really has any idea how it's going to work in the NCAA sense. And it is a credit to Cincy Reigns and some of the other ones that are doing it the right way. But at least so far, there's been very little jurisdiction on the NCAA's part to step in for those ones that where it might be the wild, wild west and say like, "Hey, what you're doing is wrong, and we're going to come down on you." Like that. That hasn't happened. I think the way, as I understand it, is like if a player is being recruited and they say, hey, Coach Satterfield, hey, Coach Miller, Coach Merriweather, whatever, tell me about, what can I get NIL wise at Cincinnati, or how does NIL work? And they say, well, look, we don't have anything to do with that, but here's, we'll get you in touch with some people, whether it's like the NIL liaison there at the university, Greg Harrell, who, works through, I think it's Altius and works with the university, or if they can send them directly to Cincy Reigns, I'm not sure, but they can basically like direct them to, here's some, where we might have some NIL opportunities that would interest you. And I think from there, then you can start going into talking to the people that can actually handle that. But yeah, it's clear that Cincy Reigns has kind of set it up the right way and done it in a way that the university feels comfortable tethering the university to Cincy Reigns in some way.
So my last question with regard to how it works exactly, ... would be, they sign these deals. Last year it was with David DeJulius, Trey Tucker. This year you see Daniel Skillings, Dante Corleone, several other players. Is the collective paying these players to advertise using their name, image, and likeness on behalf of the collective? Like, is it a circular relationship like that? That it's as simple as that, right?
Yeah. Again, I'd have to like how it all, funnels through for tax purposes. I'm not sure, but it's like the Cincy Reigns is a clearinghouse and an LLC. So basically, like, if the players agree to the terms of an NIL contract with Cincy Reigns, then whatever that stipulates, you go and read to an elementary school, or you do some community service, like that can then get you the NIL payment. And then there's obviously the other opportunities. They're all signed up on. I don't want to say the wrong one. I think they use Influencer at Cincinnati. Maybe it's a different one. There's these, these platforms that you can sign up for that the athletes are on. And if a local business or a national business, reaches out and says, hey, we want you to, do a Skyline Chili ad or a Kroger ad, or, we're going to send you some Simply Fresh products and you post them on your Instagram account or whatever it is, like they can do that too. And that gets, can set up through another way. Or if you're Des Ritter or Sauce Gardner, you have like a literal NIL agent and, they call and set everything up through that. And that's how Des Ritter is in a DoorDash commercial or wearing Bose headphones or whatever. So there's definitely different levels to it. And there's different avenues for them to do it. But yeah, Cincy Reigns, I think pretty obviously has kind of glommed on to like, here are some athletes that we think really represent the Cincy Reigns brand and ideals with that first class that they kind of put out. And I think you'll see that moving forward, but there's tons of different avenues, like the pro camps thing that they've done some different events. The Cincinnati football and basketball teams have that whole crosstown, I don't know what they called it, like crosstown fan fest. Like that thing that was all put on by pro camps. All those players got NIL money to participate in that. So there's a bunch of different kind of pots that they can go to get some NIL opportunities.
Now, do you know if the collective has partnered, or are they planning on partnering, or future plans to like offer players or incoming prospective players like brand management advice, or partnering with local advertising firms in Cincinnati to help with brand management, or maybe connecting to larger, local brands? Like, is there any? Do you know of any partnerships that exist? Or are they offering any of those types of services to the players?
I don't know if Cincy Reigns has that specifically, but that is part of the like the NIL organization that the university has set up, like through Influencer, and with that Altius, the NIL liaison that they have. Part of like the resources of all of that is talking to players about brand management and helping them make connections, whether it be local businesses or social media, whatever. So, it's all thing that they have certainly, put thought into and put resources toward. And honestly, like it's probably a little bit up to the athlete, right? Like athletes that really want to go for it and be engaged, they can, probably take advantage of those resources and use them. And, if you're not that interested in it, then maybe don't, put that much effort to it. But the sense I get is that if there's something in the NIL sphere that athletes are interested in, one way or another, the university or, the collective, something they can be involved in can help them with that.
All right, I can't take it anymore. I'm done talking about the money and the NIL. I just can't do it. So we
Please
go back.
direct all questions to B Fox Radio or whatever his handle is.
I should have just asked a yes or no question. Do you trust B Fox or not? Yes or no?
I do.
Okay.
With
There
my
it is.
life, legally and personally.
Are you a Taylor Swift fan?
Yes.
100% trustworthy.
I'm going to Paycor. I believe June 30th.
What's
that
the
leads
favorite
us
song?
Era's tour.
That was a fantastic transition, Hummer, because a question from Captain CINCY, Mr. Steal Yo Logo, was what your favorite Taylor Swift song is.
Favorite song?
Yes. Your go-to. What
Look,
you do push-ups to in the morning.
Yeah. I've always, this is going backwards, I've always caped up for Back to December. Felt she was really in her bag lyrically. I know it's a deep cut. I'm in it. I'm in it, guys. I think that's an underrated, like everyone, like, yeah, All Too Well is great. I get it. But I think Back to December is where we really started to see like she could be a banger of a songwriter. I'll give you another deep cut. It's kind of embarrassing. Like, I don't know how people feel about the Lover album. When London Boy comes on, always a good time.
Oh, yeah.
Always a good time.
Great
I'm
time.
a sucker for Heartbreak Kid.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
I don't even know if that's the name of the song, but that's I'm a sucker for that. What's your favorite era? Like, what's your least favorite era? I heard it's a 3 hour and 10-minute show with two opening acts. It's a total of like 5 hours. What she's been playing, like what the concert's been going. You're gonna have to take a pee break.
Yeah, that's
Which
gonna be
era
tough.
are you skipping?
So my T Swift hot take is that the first half of Red is her best album and the second half of Red is her worst album, which I don't think I actually believe, but it's like a good one to kind of throw out, and
Sounds
like real
cool.
Swiftie fans will like get really angry about it. I mean, 1989 is like, that's her best album, I think. Personally, I'm born in 1989. We're kindred spirits in that way. I'm holding out hope. I'm a big The National fan because I am a white middle-aged man from Cincinnati. It's like required.
I've been vibing with The National. I only recently discovered them, and I can't stop listening to it. Is it
great.
just because I'm in my mid-30s?
Yes, sad dad rock. It's just the way to go.
Amazing.
I'm really holding out hope that the
Sad
National
dad rock. Is that gonna happen to me, guys? Is that really what I have to look forward to?
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about WD-40 when I logged on here, so like you're already there, Hummer. Congratulations.
Oh, man.
But I'm really hoping that they're like a guest act. When she comes to CINCY to do the shows, that would be incredible. I'm trying to manifest that. I'm putting that out there into the world. If there's any Swifties, listening to the CINCY Slangin' podcast, let's get the National there to do Coney Island on June 30th.
My sneaky favorite bop from the 1989 album, which is a masterpiece, is How You Get the Girl. Just absolutely blast it, dance around the living room with the kids. Amazing time.
I will say at one point it was like, oh yeah, my wife's a big Taylor Swift fan, so I also am, familiar with and listen to the music. And at some point I either got over that or just stopped pretending that was true, and I'm all in.
It's incredible. Honestly,
That's how it
robust
happened here.
answer. It impressed me. One more thing, Hummer. I think it's kind of related to Taylor Swift. Not really. This is pre-Taylor. This certainly predates the era of Taylor Swift, but the sensibility of like turning on a Taylor Swift album, really getting into it and getting into your emotions makes me want to ask you what your AIM screen name was.
So I don't think I had anything like super interesting. I think it was just like my initials or something like that. I don't think I had something cool, but definitely would have been some like borderline emo lyrics or something, posted as my away message.
As your away message, yes.
Yeah, like
who was the band? What band would you have been? What band would you have been quoting?
Question. I'm sure there were like some angsty Blink-182 lyrics at some point. I would say like a lot of the music from that era, I was either too cool to acknowledge that I liked at the time. Like,
Nickelback.
well, no, Nickelback's fine, whatever. But like,
Please
I'm
just
not
don't play with me. My paper heart will bleed.
Yeah, what's is that All American Rejects?
That is All American
Yeah,
Rejects.
see, there you go. That would have been fine. I'm talking more like Michelle Branch. Like, I probably should have been more honest about how much I adore Michelle Branch when I was like that age. I can say it now openly. What's the first Kelly Clarkson album that came out?
What is that? Oh, why am I not remembering this? Hummer, you should know this. Come
Why
on.
should I know this?
First Kelly
My wife's a
Clarkson
Kelly
album.
Clarkson fan.
I don't know, whatever that, like the first one,
Breakaway.
like, Breakaway.
Yeah.
That is just an all-time fantastic album. I would not have said that at whatever time that album came out. I was much too macho and cool to think that, but
I mean, Since You've Been Gone stands the test of time.
yeah. So yeah, I don't know what else I would have probably put on my AIM away message, but certainly something that would make me both shudder with shame today, but would probably also still be on my Spotify playlists.
You were certainly emoting. We can all rest assured of that.
What's it like working with in the athletic department a guy who does not emote at all, who keeps his cards so close to the vest that literally no one has anything idea of what's going on? John Cunningham. And with that, I'm just going to get into the real question here: is why is the biggest secret, not the worst kept secret in Bearcat basketball right now, not being announced? And that's Geordan Brand.
If it were done, it would be announced. That's all I get. There are multiple elements to an apparel deal. Specifically, if that potential apparel deal.
Is Meacham holding up the deal?
See, he just said that. He just said that deal. Like he had to change it there.
I would just
Meacham's
say,
holding it up. Meacham's trying to leverage himself into the deal.
I would just say I understand people are very interested and excited in whatever apparel deal might be coming down the pike. If it were done, it would be announced.
I mean, we got rumors swirling. We have video of players that surfaced online confirming the existence of a deal. We have after the Hofstra game, there was a fan, and I happened to be there when this happened. We heard it. We heard him say that Geordan Brand was coming.
Yeah, but that player looked like he stepped on a kitten after he said it. He looked around like, what did I do?
I will also say, whether or not that is true or ends up being true, when a strange person approached you and asked you a question where they're clearly looking for an affirmative answer, usually you just give them the affirmative answer.
That's fair.
To try and
That is
avoid
fair.
any, uncomfortable follow-ups or anything like that. So, look, I know, trust me, I'm asking about it. I'm putting a lot of questions and feelers out there. It's something that they're working very hard on. But there's just a lot wrapped up and tied into it.
You bring up a good point. I'll ask you a question that's not looking for an affirmative answer then on the apparel deal. Are there other companies that we're talking to other than Geordan Brand? Are there multiple bidders per se in the process that we're going through?
I wouldn't quite phrase it that way. The new era of apparel brands is that there's never going to be a deal for Cincinnati, probably like the past Under Armour deal where they're getting millions of dollars, funneled into them every year. That's just not the way, unless you're like top tier. That's not the way the apparel brands work anymore. They're definitely exploring, have explored. This is part of the buyout with Under Armour. Even while they were under contract as like a product supply agreement, Under Armour school, they were still allowed to negotiate, and look for other apparel deals. So this is something they've been working on for a long time. They've now kind of gotten up to the point where like they're at the point where they can get out of that Under Armour deal. So that's why it's a little bit different right now. But they've certainly done their due diligence as an athletic department in terms of other opportunities and talking to other brands and things like that.
How do you think Wes Miller, I'm going to completely pivot on you here.
Okay.
This past basketball season, lots of wins. Like the raw win total looks impressive. But I think when you peek behind the curtain a little bit, it lacked a certain amount of chutzpah, for lack of a better term. I did not say that right. And don't correct me, anyone online. Chutzpah? Anyway, whatever, it lacked something. It lacked big wins. So looking at that win total and some of the struggles the team had in the bigger matchups this season, looking back on it all, how, if you give Wes Miller truth serum about how he viewed the season in terms of maximizing everything he could have from this team versus, maybe coming up short, maybe would have doing a few things differently. What's his response looking back on this past season?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure he would, be glad that they made some clear strides and improvements overall and be disappointed in some places where they fell short. From my perspective, I don't know if I wrote about this before the season. I just kind of went through the schedule and wrote down predictions. So for the regular season, I had them 21-10 and 11-7 in conference, and they were 20-11 and 11-7 in conference. So basically like the Northern Kentucky game. If they win that game, then my preseason prediction, I didn't get game by game right, but like the outcome was exactly what I predicted back in, October, November, whatever it is. So in that sense, I think
Northern Kentucky F's us again.
And do we need to pull the tapes here? I'm pretty sure we've heard you say you're not a predictions guy.
I'm not. That's why I didn't share it with anyone publicly before the season.
So
it just was very
predictions.
It was just very close to being correct so that I can share it afterwards. So in that sense, at least from my perspective, I guess it's all a question of expectations, but like they probably performed about the way that I thought they should, and probably that most people did. I think what you said though about like the big games, that was the problem, right? They lost some games they shouldn't have, Northern Kentucky, East Carolina, that Tulane game, and then they didn't have anything to offset it. They didn't have Arizona win or a Xavier win or a Houston win or a Memphis win. Nothing where you could say like, oh yeah, well, we blew the Northern Kentucky game, but hey, they beat Houston at home. That was great. And so I think that is kind of what made it feel a little bit hollow. Because, all right, if you go back and if they win all the games that they should have won, then you're probably saying the same thing. Well, they didn't have any big wins, but, hey, they won 23, 24 games, whatever it was in the regular season. They're probably even more so on, they're probably on the bubble if that's the case, finishing better in the conference. And so it's probably comes down to a couple games that, they either needed to win a game they shouldn't have, or they needed to not lose a game they shouldn't have. And I honestly, I think that's part of the process. Like, I'm a big Ken Pom fan, and I'm big in the analytics. And I also think though that it's easy to lose sight that these are college kids playing this game. And like, there is something to the fact of you have to win and you have to build up that winning mindset. And I think we saw it in those games, because how many times did they get up 10 points in the second half or something like that? And then late in the game, whether they ended up winning it or not, you saw them kind of start to struggle and fall apart a little bit. And I think
the hope tightened up. The
yeah, definitely.
Like the style of play would change at the end of games. Like the score would start shrinking, and it wasn't like they were executing the same way they did all game. You would see them kind of settle for contested jumpers or deep threes, or the path of least resistance is sort of what we saw in those tight moments or in those bigger games.
Yeah, and it was, I don't want to screw something up here, so I'm just going to take this three and hope it goes in, or I'm going to try and be the hero and stop the bleeding and take this three and hope it goes in. And Wes even talked about that late in the season. Like, it gets in your head. You're up 10 and now all of a sudden you're up 6 with 3 minutes left, and it's like, oh, here we go again. And so I do think some of it is like a mental mindset mentality approach where you have to prove to yourself you can do that, because clearly, like, we saw them, and I think for most of the season, maybe even the whole season, the best they played were the first 30 minutes against Houston on the road. And then it completely fell apart. And actually, they didn't even play that bad. Houston just went nuts. Jarris Walker went nuts. And, they looked like a team who was a top 5 team, all that kind of stuff. Cincinnati does not have that yet. And it takes a little while to establish that. And so I think you hope that maybe you took a little bit away from this season. You got better metrically, eye test, however you want to say it. You improved as a program. And now you hope that you've got a little bit more of that winning DNA. Unfortunately, you're going to try and apply that as you move into the Big 12, which is just going to be all that more challenging. But they took step forward. And while I think a lot of people, Wes Miller included, would have liked to have seen more steps forward, it was at least moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. It unequivocally moved in the right direction. I do want to follow up on shot selection, because throughout the season, I there was a lot of inconsistency in terms of execution. I would say that actually through 2/3 of the season, you would see the team really rely on a faster pace of basketball, more 3-pointers, less insistence on getting the ball down low to Vic or even a rolling Odi Oguama. And then post Tulane collapse, we saw a more concerted effort to work the ball inside more, shoot less 3-pointers. But you would also see them settle back into that habit when the going got tough. So I guess my question is, on the shot selection front, does Wes have a problem with it? Because I feel like throughout the past 2 seasons, one of the reasons Jeremiah Davenport became such a polarizing player was due to shot selection. But I recall multiple times in multiple press conferences where you were probably there, where he said he had no issue with it, and kind of shooters shoot, and you kind of have to trust guys to take those shots. What's your read on Wes Miller and the types of shots we've seen from this team over the first 2 seasons?
Yeah, I think with JD specifically, Wes would have liked a more cognitive shot selection. Like if you go out and you bang your, 2 out of your first 3 and you're feeling hot, like, all right, go ahead, JD. If you go out and you start 0 for 4, then maybe like dial it back a little bit. And I just don't think that was JD's strong suit. I think, he was always like a shooter's going to shoot mentality. And so, I think for Wes, he was trying to kind of straddle that line of like, yeah, I want you to shoot when they're going in and when you're feeling good, but you don't have to, be that way otherwise. And I do think like certain guys have different shot selections, right? And sometimes that can hurt you because sometimes Landers or JD or Dave can take a shot that maybe isn't a great shot, but you also don't see, Skillings or Josh Reed or, whoever else is like, Vic shooting threes and things like that. There are certainly shots you see guys not taking because that's pretty clear. Like this guy has a green light to take certain shots. This guy doesn't. But in the game, sometimes that can get lost. And, I think there could have been hurried or forced shots. I do think that you did at times see them play differently, whether it was like more concerted effort to get to the basket and not rely on the 3-pointer so much. I think the biggest, and this is just my opinion perspective, I don't know if the coaching staff would agree with me or not. I think a lot of Wes's offensive approach and game plan is based on how he wants his team to play defense. And I don't think he has this team playing defense the way he wants to yet. Like if you go back at Greensboro, it was press 3/4 court as much as possible, deny the ball, and off of that, play in transition, play fast, take quick shots if you can or if you want to. And so I think he's trying to preach both philosophies, but the defense hasn't quite gotten to where he wants it to be. And look, I've asked him about it a bunch. He keeps saying that. Yes, he wants to press. Yes, he wants to play defense, more intensely. And just this team, the roster he's had so far, he feels like it hasn't been able to get there. They haven't done it much. But I think maybe the offense has suffered a little bit from that as well.
Okay, that was a lot of serious Bearcats talk. I've got another one here from Catskeller Social Club. This is a little more personal, Justin. We're going to get to know the real Justin and get a peek behind the curtain.
I just talked about my love of Taylor Swift, so I don't know how much more personal we could get. But
I didn't even know you loved Taylor Swift like that when that question was asked. But if you were not a senior reporter at The Athletic, if you weren't a reporter at all, what would you be?
I think you gave me a title bump there. I believe I'm just a staff writer, but I appreciate whoever put that in there. Whoever's angling for a
you know what?
A raise
Hummer
for
fucked up the notes again. Hummer, get out.
Well, it was supposed to be. I don't know if you know this or if Coomer mentioned this at the beginning, but you are the Catskeller Social Club sexiest Bearcat staff writer.
We're gonna make him uncomfortable. He's gonna
eat
leave.
it, Springer. Well, let's see. If I were not in journalism,
Yes,
I would maybe be a stay-at-home dad, which shows my range of skills that I have.
it also might show that you've married well.
I have married very well. Now,
Hey, all right.
if I was being a stay-at-home dad, I don't know how much longer I would stay married well. But we'll see. Geez, I don't know what else I would say. It's funny. I feel very fortunate. Like I wanted to be a writer of some sort in in high school, and like I went to college for that. I've never really had a plan B, and I think that answers your question of like it would probably go pretty poorly. I'd probably just be looking for whatever job anyone would hire me for. Skyline waiter. That's what I would be. I would eat all my tips.
And I do a damn good job of it.
I have no other interests nor skills outside of writing.
Well, that was another question. What other hobbies do you have?
I have 3 children, 5 and under. So my hobbies are all on hold. I'm hoping I have a friend coming into town this weekend, and like if shit doesn't hit the fan, I'm hoping to go golfing on Saturday for the first time in a long time. But it's going to be like a game time decision.
Are you a guy who has a handicap, or
Not like a number handicap? No.
do you own your own clubs?
I do own my own clubs. They're very dusty in my garage right now.
I own my own clubs. I think I lost them a couple years ago though, but they were clubs that were like the loaner set from a horrible golf course, and they had to be from like 1986. They were terrible, but man, I played the hell out of them.
I believe mine were passed down from a deceased relative, and I hopefully have done them proud.
Do you get a sense of the type is in the portal? So Wes, we've got a few open roster spots right now. Let's say it's 2 right now. You said we might be midway through portal entries. Let's say it gets to 3. Let's say we get to 3 open spots for next season. Is Wes Miller targeting, and his staff, are they targeting specific players in the portal? Like, are they doing their pre-recruiting, AKA we haven't entered the portal yet, but we're getting a sense that there might be interest and we're doing our due diligence? Or are they looking for a type of player, a profile of player, a certain position?
I think both. I think you're looking for, you need a certain position, and then who are the guys we like at that spot? Like they know they need a big. I know it's been reported. I can confirm Jameel Reynolds, former Temple big man who's in the transfer portal. He's doing an official visit. I believe he was coming into town tonight, and would be here tomorrow as well. So like they whether it's Jameel Reynolds or anyone, that they know they need a big. They need someone who complements Vic and Odie well, who they feel like can be a starter contributor at the Big 12 level. I think they want, whether it's a combo guard or just someone on the perimeter.
Throwing us all off here.
Yeah, switching me in the middle. I've been bumped up the speed dial.
I'm producing. Let me produce.
They want I think they
Nobody would even notice if you guys didn't say anything.
Maybe. I think they would like someone in perimeter who can play both, the 1 or 2 spots. And, you also have to be careful because like you don't want to bring in someone that's going to make Davion Thomas or Jizzle James say like, hey, what the heck? I thought you trusted me and thought I was going to be ready right away. But as a coach, you also have to realize like there's a JUCO transfer and a true freshman, maybe we should make sure that we have some, other options available. Mike Adams-Woods could be one, but I think you still want to have as many people as possible that you feel comfortable with in the backcourt. And then again, like the Landers thing, just really, you don't feel like you need a dynamic scorer on the wing if you have Landers Nolley coming back, or you don't feel like you need a knockdown shooter if you have Landers Nolley coming back. But if Landers leaves, you now lost Landers, Dave, and JD, your 3 best outside shooters. Like you got to get shooting somewhere, somehow in there. And so again, that goes back to the whole scenario thing. So yeah, I think they're certainly looking, probably, maybe not as simple, but guard, wing, big. And like I would say big is probably top priority right now just because of the way that the roster's set up. And then the rest kind of depends on, again, like how do they feel? Who do they feel is coming back? What do they feel about Landers? And then you're looking for guys in those kind of silos. Like who do we think would be best fit for us and what we want to do? And then it's all like, all right, can we get that person? Are they interested in us? And sometimes that's evident right away. And sometimes, I think you got to kind of go through the process.
I'm just seeing how long I can sit there without Hummer making a move. I wanted to ask you about. Oh, my brain just went blank.
He was so
Oh,
worried about me
beer.
squeaking the chair and
It was
tapping the
beer.
desk.
It was
And
beer.
tapping the desk.
It was beer. It was beer. You're a beer drinker, I imagine, correct, Justin?
I am. I'm drinking a little tea right now. I'm getting over a little something, but I do enjoy a cold pop every once in a while.
That's something I didn't mention. Justin is a little bit under the weather, gritting through this. You described it as your personal MJ flu game.
I was hoping you would say you described it that way, but yeah, sure, we can peek behind the curtain.
Which I told you was inferring that Hummer is Karl Malone.
Okay.
That's not something you want to take, Hummer. Resist. But do you have a favorite brewery in town? No free ads, but obviously, like we love beer. You want to support local breweries around Cincinnati. Where's your go-to brewery in Cincinnati?
Oh, good question.
Maybe one for vibe, one for beer.
Unfortunately, I don't get to enjoy the vibes very much, but I love when I can get out. I love going to Mad Tree. Great pizza, great little setup. I have been to Alcove, the restaurant downtown, so I'll give Mad Tree a shout out there. I tend to find myself enjoying 50 West and Braxton beers quite a bit when it's just like random ones. Now, as a proud Ohio University graduate, I do love Jackie O's, and I will try to purchase Jackie O's whenever I find them out and can do so. But yeah, in terms of locally, Mad Tree, Ryan Geist, those are great. I always do those. But yeah, Braxton and 50 West, I tend to find myself enjoying quite a bit.
Jackie O's is something that I haven't even heard of. Is it some? So it's something I
Yeah,
could
you're missing
potentially.
out.
It's an Athens brewery. It's been around for a long time, but you can find them here. I think Who Cooks for You is a pale ale, which I'm a big fan of. You can usually find that one around town. They have great can designs and things like that. But yeah, a proud Athens brewery. They do a great job.
The player. I'm going to shift to football for a little bit, but I want to ask one more basketball question before we do. We've been pretty exhaustive in. I've been exhaustive. People are probably sick of hearing me talk about him, but Victor Locken, a guy who people I think started the year getting excited about, taking a leap, has this horrible ankle injury, comes back and just looks a little less effective for the rest of the season. You know, a little less effective on defense, certainly less effective on offense, inconsistently in the game in terms of offensive production. But all in all, you look at the raw stats, raw production increases, took a massive step forward from year 1 to year 2, or there's obviously the red shirt year in there as well. How does the staff view Victor Locken in terms of his future development? Do they see him as a big that can take it steps further in terms of being a go-to big in the post once he gets stronger and bigger? Do they see him as like a foundational defensive anchor that can, offer rim protection and block shots? Or do they see him as a big that says, hey, it's limiting our upside if he's your main post presence and we need to sort of maybe recruit over the top or recruit in unison with?
Yeah, I think first of all, so he had the ankle injury late in the year, and then actually as he was coming back from that, I think he actually kind of tweaked another injury, like lower body injury. And so that really just hampered, the comeback altogether to the point that he was barely practicing at the end of the year. And that just, that hurt him from kind of a comfortability flow standpoint. A lot of times he'd get on the floor and it looked like, man, he doesn't look as into it or as loose as he has before, and that's just because he wasn't able to practice as much. He was fighting through a lot of stuff to play, and what I felt like maybe the Hofstra game was kind of like what the first game. It looked like he was maybe back to his old self a little bit. So I think he just really struggled there at the end of the year. And to me, that's the thing with Vic is he has all the talent in the world and he can only get better. And I think the staff feels that way too. The issue with him that has always been the case and will continue to be the case is his durability and his injury concern. And, we saw it the year before, we saw it this past year when he played at a really high level leading up to that. I think there's just this concern of, can he play 20, 25 minutes for 30 to 35 games a season? And if he can, I think he's going to be a really good all league caliber player. But like you say, whether you're recruiting over him or not, I think you're recruiting someone where it's like they can play. Best case scenario, they play with and alongside Vic if he's healthy. And worst case scenario, they can kind of pick up the slack along with Odie and whoever else if Vic gets hurt and goes down. And so that's they certainly Vic put a lot of work into his body this past offseason. I think we saw the benefits of that, and it's something he's going to have to do this offseason as well, because if he can stay healthy, he's a huge piece. But that's always has been, and I think will always be the concern with Vic moving forward.
So this year we get the Monster Factory comparison pick. Do we get those this year with Vic?
I hope so.
Abs. The most self-indulgent question we had in the Catskeller Social Club Discord was from Captain CINCY again, Justin. He said, "What does Justin think of the stolen logos?"
I do. I see them on Twitter. I think they're great. It was a fair, self-indulgent question. I'm a big fan of them.
Do you have a favorite? Is there one that like just pops into your brain that says, "Oh, I love that stolen logo"?
I'd have to go back and look. He did. I remember liking the Arkansas one because it was like the running Bearcat, instead of the Razorback back in football season. And I thought I remember him doing a throwback one where he stole a throwback logo and inserted a Bearcat logo, like towards the end of the basketball season. But I'd have to go back and look specifically. But I do remember, I can see in my mind the Arkansas one. That was a great one.
This wasn't a stolen logo, but the recent twist or version he did for the Xavier Cincinnati baseball game that was played, and it was the Bearcat holding the skull, the decapitated skull of whatever that blue thing is that represents Xavier. That to me was the best
blue blob.
creation. The blue blob.
Yeah.
That was the best creation Justin's ever made, and you can find all of that at Captain_CINCY on Twitter and Instagram.
What do you think Xavier's biggest accomplishment was? There was a poll going around. It said, beating UC, number 1 ranked team in the country, or beating UConn twice in one season. Do you view those as accomplishments? Do you think Xavier should hang a banner for that? Would should they be embarrassed that that's what they're hanging their hats on as the greatest accomplishments in their school's history? I'm loading this question up.
I'm an impartial journalist, so I'm not the person to come to for Xavier slander. I enjoy.
He's winking his
I
eye.
enjoy when everyone goes about. I can't quite remember how many Final Fours they've been to, but I enjoy when that stat gets brought up over and over again on Twitter. But yeah, I enjoy watching the crosstown shootout fan back and forth from afar, but I'm just there watching as an onlooker.
Now,
Justin,
if you want to ask me some things about Miami of Ohio, I have tons of shade to
Miami,
throw.
Ohio takes.
Yeah.
Get him, Hummer.
As a proud Bobcat. But
that's
no,
what you think about Oxford.
Do they still dress the same in 2023 as they did back in 2007?
Just Sperry and North Face, I'm assuming, yeah.
I need a quick clarification before I ask this question, Justin. Did you start covering UC when Mick Cronin was still the head basketball coach?
I did. I started covering the end of the, I guess it would be 17-18 season. Can't remember how that ended in a freelance capacity. And then his final season, which I guess would be 18-19. That was like my first full season on the beat. Yes.
So marry, fuck, kill. Cronin, Brannon, Miller.
I as an impartial journalist, I once again have to abstain. It's a fair question, but I have to abstain.
We all know there's a right answer here.
Probably only one of those are taking my calls, if that matters at all. But
Really, you've got beef? You've got beef with Mick?
I don't have beef with anyone. It's just that doesn't mean I will answer all three of their calls, but I think only one, and maybe on a good day, will answer my calls.
So good. I'm not going to go too deep on football with you, and frankly, you've been so generous with your time despite the flu, and you're doing a great job. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I might call this your flu game. Now we need to see how it finishes. You would have nailed it had you answered the Mary Fuck Killer question. But, let me ask you a little bit about football. It's hard to talk about because obviously there's only been a few practices and we haven't seen any games, and Scott Satterfield's only had half of his staff for like 4 days. So tell me a little bit about, first impressions of the Scott Satterfield era in terms of just things that have kind of stood out to you and caught your eye as just dramatic differences from what you've seen from past regimes.
Yeah, the one thing that jumps out to me, and I don't know if it's going to show up from like an outward perspective or fans will be able to notice because so much of it is in like internal in the way the program runs, but Scott Satterfield and Luke Fickell are just completely different personalities. And that's not to say, one's better than the other, but like Luke Fickell is intense and kind of old school football, and Scott Satterfield is pretty laid back and easygoing and really
Nolley.
really analytical. And that gets used against him. And that's not to say, like, I've been out at practices. I've seen him rip into the team after practice, seen him ripping. He yelled at some wide receiver today because he was like running in motion when they were trying to clock the ball. Like, he's not just, oh, shucks, we lost. That sucks, fellas. But they're just like a completely different personality.
Had fun.
That does get put on him, and I don't think that's totally accurate. He is competitive. I wrote that whole feature about that, but they're just very different personality types, and I think the way that they coach and lead a team is kind of very different. So I'm curious to see how that works, especially when there's been a lot of turnover, but the majority of the roster are guys who were recruited under the previous staff and played under the previous staff. How do you then kind of respond to a new directive and a new staff? So again, I don't know, how that shows up necessarily in terms of what people see on the field and things like that, but that's, the culture of the program is going to be very different just on the way that both of those guys tend to run things. And so I think that'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. In terms of on the field, I think this defense should still be really good. I know that's kind of been the calling card for Cincinnati under Fickell. I think that will continue. Part of that is kind of what they're getting back, especially on the defensive line. Satterfield talked after practice on Wednesday about, yeah, the offensive line, we need to move them along, but it's also tough to judge them because they're going against Juwan Briggs and Dante Corleone and Malik Vann. And, he said basically like they're not going to play anybody this year stronger than Dante Corleone. So, yeah, they might not look very good sometimes, but that's because the defensive line's really good. I think some of the pieces they added on defense in the portal, Dorian Jones, DJ Taylor, Jordan Young, I think those are going to be like impact guys for them this season. And the way Brian Brown plays defensively, like there's a little bit of Marcus Freeman in him in terms of he's really aggressive, really instinctive. He wants his guys to go make plays. And we've seen that in, spring practice in terms of guys making interceptions, and fumbles aren't as common because you're not, tackling live necessarily all the time, but getting their hands on passes and kind of creating big plays that way. Offensively, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think we can't underestimate how much of an upgrade that's going to be over Tressel. That guy sucked. Keep going.
I believe didn't he win assistant coach of the year?
Yeah, those words mean nothing. I loved how, by the way, that's the hilarious thing about fans though. Like, oh, Tressel won, he sucked. That award means nothing. Tom Manning won that award. Yeah, he won that award. Former nominee. You know what I mean? That word means nothing. It's political.
So offensively, I think it's a work in progress. I think like it's pretty clear it's going to be either Ben Bryant or Emory Jones. I think how that plays out and how that gets decided will be really interesting because the offense is going to be impacted quite a bit by whoever, that quarterback is. Scott Satterfield has been very upfront and honest that they need to add wide receivers in this next transfer portal. And anyone who's been at practice and watched would understand, like they need bodies first of all, but they definitely need to upgrade at that position. And so
how does that reveal itself? Is it drops? Is it just confusion? How is it so obvious that they need them?
Part of it is just lack of numbers. Like I think they would prefer to have about 11 scholarship players at wide receiver, and I think they have 6 right now, 5 or 6.
That's not very many.
And that's just turnover of guys going to the NFL, guys going to the transfer portal. They added a few during the past window, but they just need more bodies there first of all, but definitely some playmakers. And so in that sense, it's kind of hard to judge because you're judging the quarterback a lot off of what the receivers do, and you feel like they don't have their full roster in place on that front. I think they'd probably like to add an offensive tackle, which most programs probably would. But I think they'd like to fill out the depth on their offensive line, and really depth in general, I think will be the biggest challenge for them this year. I think when they get to the season, they'll feel pretty good about their top 22, 25 guys total, 12, 13, 14 guys on either side of the ball. But it's not going to stay that way the whole season. Guys are going to get hurt. And so I think the question for them becomes, what do they have on that second and third team depth chart line that's going to be able to come in and play at a power conference level? And whether it's because they're just too young and not developed, or they just don't have them yet, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge and kind of the thing I'm watching as they get closer to the season.
One thing that was made a lot about when he was hired was that he did get this really nice chunk of cash to use on his staff, assistant coaches, but as we came to learn, also like a football support staff. And the big position that jumped out to me was Zach Grant being hired as the general manager of the football team. Can you tell me about what that means exactly? What is the GM doing for a Bearcats football program or a college football program?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it's just title. Like it's a recruiting coordinator, recruiting director. But as you have more responsibilities with the transfer portal and NIL and things like that, like you kind of can give more responsibilities to whoever's in that position. And if you have a general manager, then that also allows you to hire a recruiting director, recruiting coordinator kind of below them. And so, yeah, Zach Grant, Jack Griffith, Cass Simmons, Carter Wilson. This is the biggest recruiting staff that the Bearcats have had football in the history of the program. And, it goes deeper than that. They have, I don't know what the total numbers they have in their recruiting staff, but they have put a lot of resources into that. And I think that's one of the things that, you're looking for. What do you feel good about for the future of the program? I think the investment that Satterfield has made in the recruiting staff has been really well put, really, done well so far. And I think that's going to help them moving forward.
How does a recruiting staff differentiate itself? Like, is it, what are they doing? Are they surveying the landscape? Are they sort of poking around to see what kind of players might become available in the transfer portal? Are they scouring the high school ranks to get a sense of who's out there? What's it look like?
Yeah, I think talent evaluation is the biggest key. And like Jack Griffith, he's a guy who he spent a year as an NFL scout. Like, he understands kind of what you're looking at the highest level in terms from a talent, evaluation perspective. Zach Grant and Cass Simmons have been at Ohio State. Say what you want about Ohio State, they usually tend to get really good players on the football field. So I think it starts there. And look, this is always something that this is what I think made Luke Fickell such a great coach, is he had an eye for talent, undervalued talent oftentimes, in the state of Ohio. He could just find guys who, this guy fits our system, and who cares what his star rating is or, what he played in high school. I think he can play, and then they bring him in and develop him. But I think from the recruiting standpoint, talent evaluation is kind of where it has to start. And I certainly think that they have some bona fides in that area. And then it's always relationship stuff. And a lot of that comes down to the coaching staff too. But you have to be targeting the right guys. And so I think a lot of efforts and resources have been put towards that in terms of hiring and building out the recruiting department. Is who cares what their star rating is, or who cares where they went to high school or whatever. Here's the way we want to play. Here are kind of how we see these positions being on the field. Go find the guys that fit that. And so again, how long it takes to kind of see that flesh out on the field, I don't know, probably maybe not this fall necessarily. But as you get a couple classes in, I'll be interested to see some of these guys who they bring in, whatever their recruiting ratings might've been, what do they look like when they get on the field?
Well, Justin, I don't know if you guys can tell on your side. I like being fully transparent. My computer looks like it's about to catch on fire. I don't know what's happening. It's going slow motion. We've got Hummer flushing toilets in the background. Things are getting weird. But that's usually what happens after you're an hour in. So
our pets' heads are falling off.
So a final question,
Sure.
and it's if we're what are we, April 6th? We're only a couple short months away from the summertime. Do we have any early contenders for Song of the Summer? A song that's going to be on your Spotify that you're going to be ripping your shirt off to, hitting the pool, throwing the trunks on. What's on your playlist right now?
So this is a very hard question for me to answer, because I will say, people always tell you, like, when you have kids, you have to give up some things. And like music, new music specifically, is just something that I have, like movies and music, I have kind of totally lost the thread on. Like whatever is new and cool and exciting, I probably don't know about it or haven't gotten to it yet. Especially if it's like a new band I haven't heard before. So I don't even know what would be like a reasonably good answer to that question. The only like relatively new song I've heard is that Miley Cyrus Flowers song, which might be good, but I've heard it like so much on TikTok that I
So
can't
good.
even stand to listen
It's
to
so
it
good.
anymore.
Oh, it's so good.
But that's the best that I could even offer. I did the national, again, back to my sad white dad rock. They put out a new single a couple weeks ago where they shouted out the Afghan Wigs, which was cool, little Cincinnati connection. But I'm the wrong guy to ask about new music.
I'm picturing white tube socks with sandals. Like when I hear, like, is this what they're rocking out on stage now for this white dad? Soft rock.
He's a St. X guy, huh?
That's right, he is. Matt Berninger. He's a St. X grad. I should ask you guys though, what should I? So isn't this the thing? You dress up in the era that's your favorite era for the Eras tour, correct?
Oh, that's a good
Ooh.
question. Hummer, Hummer would know the answer to this. Don't you have
I thought that was like
I've been seeing people on
directive.
Facebook dressing up for it. That's what I've been seeing. And they do seem to be wearing kind of like the eras-ish outfits. But I feel like they're almost all the same, when it comes to 1989 to the present. Like all her kind of style hasn't really deviated that much. Maybe folklore. I guess you have a big variation.
Reputation was quite a deviation.
I'm seeing she always wears the tight black pants and with like the white shirt, like like a tight white shirt.
I don't think you dress up as Taylor Swift. You dress up as the embodiment.
I'm seeing people dressing up as Taylor Swift.
I can't pull that off. I can maybe pull off Matt Berninger. But
so you're dressing. Let me ask for some clarification here. You're dressing as like the era in which the album came out, or the era that the album represents. Like, would you be dressing like you were from 1989? Is that what you're saying?
I assume that the album is the era, and then you dress as that era. So like if you're a Red era fan, then you're wearing like the fall scarf and the big brim like white Christian girl
Got
hat.
it.
If you're Reputation, you're like black dominatrix. If you're folklore, you're sweater cardigan type deal. So I'm just, again, maybe I'm totally wrong. I really do not want to upset the Swifties. I apologize if I'm wrong on this, but that was my understanding.
Where are you seeing this concert? Which one are you going to?
The one at Paycor, it's the first one, which I believe is June 30th. I think it's 30th and July 1st, right?
Sounds right. Hummer, are you going? Do you have tickets, Hummer?
No, I wasn't able to score them. Was not able to score. Wow. I was part of the
Ticketmaster strikes again.
Yeah, they struck again. But it's funny because you mentioned like the first half of Red and the second half of Red, and I think there's parts of like folklore where it's like, the first half of that album is fire, and then the back half of it's like, what are you doing to me here? Why are you making me sit through this?
What was Betty on? Betty was great. That's a hit.
I don't remember, but I'm definitely going. I have a lot of cardigans. I have a lot of like Tommy Bahama. Yeah, when I say Tommy Bahama, like fake flannel shirts. So that's probably what I'd be rocking with a pair of aviators.
I don't think she's hit her Tommy Bahama era yet. That'll be like
she hasn't hit that yet.
Much later in her career.
Betty was on folklore.
The more I'm saying this, guys, I am becoming a dad. Okay, I'm wearing boring clothes. I'm wearing cardigans and white.
Don't look
socks.
down from your ivory tower at us and your Tommy Bahama shirts.
I've got a very clear. I've got a strong desire to get into your TikTok algorithm, Justin. But I'm going to resist the urge. Next time you're on, we're diving into that TikTok algorithm. And maybe it's banned by then. Maybe it doesn't even exist. But just
that's true.
Remember what's going on your TikTok, because next time we have you on, I want to dive into that. But for now, let's let you go. Justin Williams, you could find your work on The Athletic,
Wait,
obviously.
we can't let him off that early. One more thing. I know you're not big into predictions. This is the last one, but then I'll let Coomer let you go.
Okay.
First seasons in the Big 12, basketball, football. Where do we finish?
It's the rosters. Come on, man. It's unfair.
Yeah, it's unfair.
It's way too early. I know.
Way-
That's why it's
way
a hard
too early.
question.
I have to abstain.
But promise us you'll make a prediction
I
before the
will.
seasons happen once rosters have been completed.
When rosters are more set and you
Okay.
have me back, assuming you still hold me to this, yes, I will make a prediction.
Oh, we're definitely holding you to this. So follow Justin Williams on Twitter at Williams_Justin. His work is on The Athletic. He's a tremendous follow on Twitter, but also your work is well done. It's a great read, and it's what keeps me subscribed to The Athletic. Because before it was an effort to support my friend, but now all I do is ask my friend if I can hold $1.
And then you can follow him in the Discord at Can I Get a Pair?
I'll tell you what. I will quickly let you guys throw out. five handles, whatever they're calling the Discord. And if I am one of those handles, I promise you I will tell you yes.
Oh.
It's me, Doggy Dog.
No.
That's one, Hummer. We have 4 more guesses.
I gotta go. I've already done that one. It's not even funny anymore. You're definitely Bearcat fan 85.
No.
It is. I'm gonna guess that you are. Just for comedy, are you Professor Butts?
I am not Professor Butts. Isn't there a professor? Like there is a Professor Butts on Twitter, I believe.
Yeah, we know
that
who
would
it
be
is.
that would be wrong to.
It was just too
to
funny.
cuckold that name.
It was too funny not to say. I'm sorry.
You know what I was doing this? You're neither confirming nor denying the existence of a burner account. But even if there's not one in there, we're all gonna think it's in there now.
I just figured out who it is, Hummer. Can I guess?
Yeah.
It's Urette Bormark.
No.
Oh, is it you?
No. I guess it's a good name, but no, that's not me.
Do we have
I
two more-
promise, if it were me, I would tell you.
2 more guesses?
Sure. Well, I'll disallow, or I won't count Professor Butts.
Don't count Professor Butts. Your fun uncle? Did that already get guessed or no?
No.
Your fun uncle.
No.
Oh, crap. One more.
There's so many good ones in here.
There's some weird names in here. I can't. Is Justin the kind of guy who's going to go with the comedic effect? I feel like you're a comedy guy. Like you're going to try and make people laugh, put his silly name in there, and just never say anything. Who are those people? Who are those people? It's me, Doggy Dog gets me every time. We are going to go with. Are you Chad?
I'm not Chad.
All right, Justin. Appreciate you being on the CINCY Slang and Bearcat podcast. You can find his work in the Discord under some anonymous name, and then also on The Athletic. Thanks, buddy, for doing this.
Appreciate you guys. Anytime.
Thanks.